Hospital Port as pride and dignity stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panmo TV and welcome back to, well, you know where this is because I was here just barely over a week ago to watch Backrooms. This is the path to the View Cinema. Alright, so to begin with, a little bit of trivia, which this is off topic, but I want to ask local people, if you are local and you're watching this, maybe you could help me with a little bit of a conundrum. Where exactly did the Minchley Farm Country Club used to be? I know it's somewhere around here because I remember that bridge. I remember the bridge. I feel a bit nostalgic when I talk about this actually, but I used to go to the Minchley Farm Country Club. It was always late at night. It was always in a taxi. It was always when I was 6 or 7 pints into a bender, post 2 to 10. So I have sort of limited memory of the journey. But we was in a taxi, usually with always with other guys, and we drive. I can't remember if we went under this bridge or not, but I remember this bridge. And used to go to the Minchley Farm Country Club, which is a fantastic place. It was a very, very good-natured, upmarket kind of nightclub where the bouncers still wore tuxedos and everyone had fun and there were no fights, that kind of place, you know. I just can't remember where. I can't remember exactly where it was. I doubt it's probably buried under that somewhere because I mean it's not here anymore, I'm sure. There's no building around here and I recognise there's anything like it, although like I said, I only ever saw it at night, never saw it in daylight. Alright, just let me know if you're local. Okay, we're walking down here now to the View Cinema again. It's a bit cloudy, but it's warmed up a bit, it's quite warm, and I've got my appropriate Told You So t-shirt on, and my Roswell hat. There we are, I got that in, it says here, We'll Know the Truth, July 1947, very appropriate. I got that in Contact in the Desert. I'm going to watch Disclosure Day for a second time. Only this time is going to be a proper review. Full review. There will be spoilers, lots of them. I'll be doing a deep dive into the movie, so it's going to be very different from the Disclosure Day video I did last. I will put a link in the description box to that, so you can watch that. If you've not seen it, it'll give you some good background, actually, into this whole matter. But, yeah, it's... I'm actually going to the first showing, 10:30 AM. It's the first showing in Oxford. I wanted to go to one of the small independent cinemas, but they're not showing it today. Well, the Phoenix is, but that's the one where my mum used to work. She was an usherette there. That's not going to be till mid-afternoon. I won't be able to go then. I will go watch it at one of the independent Sheffield cinemas, though, definitely, because I do believe in supporting them, as someone in the comments has actually said. All right, So I don't know how many people are going to be at this one. I booked in advance again. There are only a handful of tickets sold. I'm assuming... I made the assumption last time when I went to High Wycombe on Wednesday to see the preview. I'm assuming that, wrongly probably, that there's going to be loads of hardcore UFO believers there. And I might make some new friends, people in the local area who are like woo-woos like me. Hope so, anyway. But I should have invited Lance Corporal along. No, as I will get in touch with him. Maybe we can go and see it another time. But anyway, this is the first showing in Oxford. The film goes on the general release today. Millions of people are going to crowd into the picture houses all over the world to see this, especially like if they are part of the UFO fraternity. Spielberg did not make this film for us, I don't think. Unlike Dan Farrar and his Age of Disclosure, he didn't make the film for us. But clearly he knows that we are the people who are going to take the most interest in it. We're the ones who are going to take the most interest. We're the ones who are going to want to see it the most. And he should expect that. So, in a sense, if I feel, in a way, it was made for us, in a way. I mean, a lot of the material in the Disclosure Day, I remember from the preview, is stuff I'm already aware of. And I suppose my biggest criticism, and I'll come back to this, probably my biggest criticism of the film, because it's not perfect, it's very good, but it's not perfect, is that there was like several dozen ufological concepts hurled at us in the space of 2 hours and 20 minutes with very little kind of explanation. Very little explanation indeed. And Orby might find that a bit too much to deal with. Because for some people, this is the first time these concepts have come to them. It's not for me, but it is for them. Hopefully it'll just encourage them to be more curious and learn more. Others might just get put off by that. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, we'll find out The film hits picture houses across the world today. It's on general release from now on. So I mean, I'm not bothered if there's only a handful of people at this showing. It's a weekday. It's Friday. Most people are at work. I'm off work for the next few days. I specifically booked 4 days off work for this. As we approach the Kassam Stadium, we're almost there now. So I imagine there'll be this evening. They'll probably sell out. The showings will be sold out this evening, definitely. So you'll be packed. They'll be absolutely packed to the brim. Now there is something that might keep people away from the cinema. That is the World Cup. The World Cup kicked off yesterday. And there's going to be a lot of attention on that one. One of the world's, the FIFA World Cup is one of the primary sporting events in the calendar of the football calendar, indeed the sporting calendar generally. Probably it won't be such a big deal because, I mean, the focus will be on the England matches, obviously being here in England, and they're not playing until I think they've got Croatia, and it's next Wednesday they kick off. So England aren't playing till Wednesday anyway. So probably people take less interest now in what goes on. Sure, there'll be some real hardcore fans who will want to really get into it, watch every single match, you know. But most of those, if they have an interest in UFOs, they'll probably take some time out to go and watch the movie. To watch Disclosure Day. Anyway, okay, so we're nearly there. I'm actually slightly late. I only didn't catch the bus I wanted. I had to get the next one, so I better get a move on. It's a bit windy. It's a bit slightly windy, and there's some clouds coming, but it's actually quite warm. Yeah, better get on with this. Yes, new released movies don't watch themselves, you know. And there is the View Cinema, and we're going to go in there now. Well, never watch a film just once. That's what I just realised. Never watch a film just once. I've, there's several times in my life where I've watched a film, I've had one opinion of it, and I've watched it another time, and I've changed my opinion of it, even though I'm seeing the same film. Paul, the film about the little alien, the comedy. I didn't like it when I first saw it. It grew on me. This has grown on me. Not that I disliked it the first time. I mean, I gave it 4 out of 5, but I'd up that to 5 out of 5 now. I've seen it a second time, and I got way more out of it this time than the first time round, and possibly because I noticed things I didn't notice before. So it's a bit windy here. I think I noticed things I didn't notice before. Cross over this road. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes in which the viewer is bombarded with so much. I mean, I said this on Wednesday, so much information, and I think it's a bit difficult to take in. There's not enough time within the scope of the movie to explain everything, but you just got to let yourself go with it. You just got to roll with it, as one of the characters says. Just roll with it. I think the actors, I think Spielberg certainly, and the production team, also I think the cast actually have researched some of this stuff. I get the feeling they know something. They know some of it already. I get that feeling. I really do. I think they know stuff. It's an extraordinary. It's an extraordinary movie. I mean, I can tell you a little bit what I've discovered about the background. For instance, Emily Blunt recorded the strange noises she makes herself. I mean, Steven Spielberg said, "Oh, we can do this with AI," and she says, "No, I want to do it." And so she worked on those noises herself. She even went into a bathroom where it was echoey, and actually practiced in there. And then when she went to the studio, they put microphones on different part, like in her throat and on different parts of her face, where it would pick up different sounds, and then they mixed them, and they sort of modulated them, but those all come from her, those sounds. Now, it's not perfect. I mean, there was some criticisms. For example, it's sometimes easy to confuse some characters in the trailer. For example, I think what's interesting is that the bad guy, of course, is Noah Scanlon, Colin Firth's character. He's got a sidekick called Boyd, Casper Boyd, and I got a bit confused in the trailer because he's played by Henry Lloyd Hughes, who's best known for he plays a character in Harry Potter. Not that I'm a big Harry Potter fan, but he plays a character in Harry Potter. And he's another Brit. Yes, it's a very British cast. This particular movie. Steven Spielberg's really he's crossed the Atlantic specifically to our Sceptred Isle for his choice of thespians. He really, really has. He's really, really done a good job in terms of movie relations between Hollywood and Pinewood, I suppose. But I must say that the problem is the two characters look too alike. Daniel and Boyd look too alike. And in the trailer I confused them. In the trailer where Scanlon sees that old woman in front of him, which is actually his wife Jocelyn, who died. So there's going to be spoilers in this, lots of spoilers. Okay, so don't watch this if you don't want those. I'd wait till you've seen the movie actually before you watch this. But there's again, it feels like this. Again, I'm focusing on my criticisms of it, which I thought on Wednesday and I still feel now, is that you can't fit even the story itself seems a bit. It seems a little bit decapitated and then in the sense that it starts abruptly. There's no prologue scene. If there was, it was cut out. I mean, they've got to fit into 2 hours 20 minutes. Like, they could have put more in, and then it'd have been a 3-hour movie, and the studio would have said, "No way, you're not putting 3-hour movies in any of our cinemas. We want people to buy, we want as many people to buy tickets as possible." But a prologue scene would have helped, because you have to pick up the reasons why Daniel, all the characters are doing what they're doing. Daniel in particular, why he went renegade. Where's this group come from that's surrounded by Hugo? This sort of like renegade, this sort of like these defectors from Wardex, led by Hugo. There's a whole load of them. There's a young black guy who's always following Hugo around, and I thought that's his son. His name apparently is Nathan Twining, who of course, as you know, is the Cutler Twining Memo, 1947. They called the character Nathan Twining, which I thought was quite amusing. So there really needed to be a prologue. Also, it ends abruptly as well. It ends very abruptly, and then there's the final shot is amazing because you just see Margaret through the camera lens sitting there, and she says, "Listen." That's the last line of dialogue, and then cuts to credit. The score, all right. The score is by John Williams, and it's good. It's appropriate. It works. It sets the mood. It's one of these things that sort of goes into your ears in the background. That if it does its job well, you hardly notice it unless it has a specific personality of its own that goes beyond the movie. Indeed, this is what surprised me, because you don't actually hear the score until you watch the movie. The soundtrack of the trailers, the music you hear in the trailers, is not part of the movie score. It's not. The score is orchestral. It's opera. It's kind of orchestral, operatic. There's vocals. There's big orchestras. Recordings as John Williams likes. John Williams is now 94 years old and he's still going strong. But there's no memorable riffs, in the score. There's no la 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 la, and there's no do 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 do. There's nothing like that. So it's a very low key background score without its own kind of personality, I would say. I mean, a lot of people. This has been talked about a lot, and Spielberg has talked about a lot in his interviews. Empathy is the key theme of this movie, and indeed, that's good when you consider that so many people like me have this empathic disorder that can't be cured, which means we can't be good citizens. But Oh, it's quite moving actually when you think about it. It really is. There's lots of high emotion in this, lots and lots, and it's affected me more the second time I've seen it, much more this time. It's the character, the characterization is excellent. I mean, and the acting is fantastic. The best favourite character by far is Margaret. She's really the driving force, I think. I mean, she's obviously, the others play their role too very well, but she's the best developed character of all. And she's this young woman she's a weather forecaster on the news, and she has a boyfriend called Jackson, who it turns out that Jackson's actually not all that keen on her, and he's thinking of, because she can read minds, when she learns telepathy and can read minds, she finds out just by reading his thoughts that he's thinking of leaving her and going somewhere else. Which is sad, which is a pity. I wouldn't in his shoes, I'll tell you. Well, I've never really thought of Emily Blunt as attractive. Never. But her character is adorable. I mean, the character Margaret is one of these people that I do find absolutely adorable. This is somebody who is very sort of like very extrovert and fun-loving, with a big heart, very caring, very passionate, slightly immature, slightly scatterbrained. It's very much like Roy Neary. Very much like Roy Neary. In fact, Margaret, it's sad, but you know, it feels sad to think about it, but Margaret reminds me very much of Sue Stain, my ex-partner. She's very much like that. Very a likeable person. Very, very sincere, honest, and things like that. And she discovers her skills when she's sitting at home with Jackson, and they're just eating breakfast, and this cardinal bird flies in. You sit in the trailer and lands, and at that moment she suddenly starts speaking in Russian. Later on she speaks in Korean. She suddenly finds she can speak other languages, and then of course she speaks that alien language, and she doesn't really realise she's doing it. And she does, and at one point she's speeding to work because she's late, because she has this slightly disorganised part of her personality which is so endearing. But she's stopped by the police. She's stopped by a policeman, and he's about to pull her over and delay her for ages while he checks up and everything. And then she starts telling him things about his own life, and about his little kid his wife just had, things like that. And he stares at her in shock and lets her go. And she says, "How did that happen?" You know, she doesn't even understand it herself. I might try and walk down the back route today. I need a bit of privacy. I need a bit of privacy, because yeah, it's but yeah, it's definitely a wonderful character. She gives such a good performance. You know, a lot of movie critics are already saying this is the finest performance of her career, which is very, very long, very acclaimed. This is the best thing she's ever done. Spielberg's actually said, you know, that he wants to start a conversation with this film, and of course having the conversation is a bit of an Orwellian term, but I don't think he really thinks this is, I don't believe that Spielberg actually thinks this is sci-fi. He says it's not science fiction, and he believes, people have pressed him on this, do you believe all this stuff? And he won't like give a definitive yes I do. Coward. I wish you'd just say, yeah, I believe in all this. I've become like a real UFO believer again, like I used to be in the 70s when I made Close Encounters. You see, it's similar to Close Encounters in the sense that it does end very abruptly, and there's no postscript that it really needs. Obviously, I think it's another thing that Spielberg just wants to leave to people's imagination. And I mean, when it cuts to credits, I think, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? David Icke has commented on this. I'll say more about that later. I mean, I don't know if I'll show you the video that he's made, but I might even write an article about it. I might not include my commentary on David Icke and his opinion on this in this particular video. I'll think about it. I might do that when I get back. Where are we now? Just couldn't. I've been scrawling these notes, you know, which are like really. which are really, obviously I'm writing notes in the, you see, this is what my notes look like, because I'm writing in a dark room, you know. Now the opening scene is really, it starts very strangely. There's a wrestling match. As I said, there's going to be spoilers here. You're in the middle of a wrestling match, and but the very first shot is you see, and maybe this is putting the viewer in the point of view of Daniel and Margaret, in the sense that you get this huge empathy, you get this ability to move inside people. I mean, what she feels is not just the kind of empathy that people like me who suffer from this empathic disorder have. That is, we sense other people's emotions and we're very caring. She actually finds herself almost becoming other people. She explains it at one point, how she feels, in a very sort of like breathless, sort of distracted way, a bit like just like Roy Neary in Close Encounters. As I say, she's so like him. But you basically see the wrestling match sort of POV from the point of view of the wrestler. It's really, really strange. Which I think is maybe symbolic of it's putting the viewer in the position that she's in. She becomes that wrestler when he's been having his head stamped on by another wrestler. I mean, I'm sure that the backslappers will say this is related to kayfabe. You know, this kayfabe is this kind of unspoken agreement between wrestlers to sort of like put up a performance as well as making it a sport. Kelly Chase talked about that at Contact in the Desert last year, if you remember. I love this little alleyway. It's really cool. It's a great place for privacy when it's not too muddy. But maybe that's the point they're trying. I don't know if that's the point they're trying to make. I mean, there's going to be lots of opinions on this. Loads of people won't agree with me. A good friend of mine, actually, I know is going to completely reject my opinion on this, because she's spoken about this. She hasn't published anything. She sent to me a private message saying this is all monarch mind controlled. She sent me a long, detailed explanation of why that was. The symbolism, things like that in it. I really don't think so. I mean, it seems extremely unlikely when you put it into the context of other things, other elements of it. The first time you see Noah Scanlon, he's like silhouetted, so you know he's a bad guy. You know he's a bad guy. But he's a good bad guy in the sense that he's not like some Machiavellian. You know, bad guys can be. Getting a good hero is a good way. You need a good hero character in a movie. But also you need a good anti-hero, or you need a good villain in a film. You need a bad guy who's complex, not just some Machiavellian sort of monster who's just bad for the sake of being bad. They've got to have some depth to them. I mean, one of the best antagonists in any piece of fiction I've ever come across has to be Servalan in Blake 7. I mean, one of the reasons that series was so successful, despite its very homespun special effects, even for the 70s, it was really, really cheap special effects, was that dramatic energy that she and the other characters put into it. And Scanlon, he presents that you understand why he's doing what he's doing. He's not like he's not doing a thing. He doesn't wake up every morning thinking, hey, how can I be evil today? How can I do the devil's work? He believes he's on the side of the angels. He says, you know, history has no reset key. If you do this, there's no going back. And he's terrified. He's genuinely scared of what would happen with disclosure. He believes that disclosure is impossible because it's a knowledge that would actually destroy the fabric of society. If everyone knew it, we couldn't function as a civilization. That's what he truly believes. And there are many real-life counterparts like that, both public and private. Not just people who I believe are behind the secret, the secret keepers. I'm talking about people in the UFO commentariat who actually say this. You know, you want disclosure, but what would disclosure mean? And I mean, a good example is the Brookings Institute. I mean, I've talked about the Brookings Institute many times in my SETI talk, for example. I hope you can hear me. I'm gonna speak up when it gets windy so you can hear me. And since he's an embodiment of that, he's been doing this for his entire career. He runs this group Wardex, which is actually a private contractor, which actually works for the US Department of Defense. And there's actually a scene where he's meeting with all these generals to do this job for them. It's essentially been outsourced, which of course is quite a common tactic. It's quite a common practice in government activities, because you outsource something, you remove it. It gives you legal loopholes, things like that. This is what the Davis Wilson memo was like this. Eric Davis, what he found from Admiral Wilson, he showed this bigot list of people, and they were all like, they all worked for a private contract. There were very few military titles, very few people that anyone had heard of, because it's a private company, and that's what they do. And WardX is a fictional version of that. I suppose someone was actually saying this on Twitter the other day. Well, it doesn't really make sense because you see, their plan is what basically has happened is Daniel has stolen the databases with all the evidence of UFOs on videos, telemetry, all kinds of scientific papers and stuff like that. That are highly classified, and he wants to publish them. Now, funnily enough, he just says, "Why don't we just dump the whole lot online?" And Hugo, who's running this defector ring, says, "No, we can, on no account can we do that." And you wonder why. I mean, someone on Twitter said, "Why not?" And I suppose maybe because if it just appeared online, no one would believe it. They would say it was all fake. And even when it does finally appear on TV, getting ahead of myself, someone says, "Is this AI?" And then someone else in the TV gallery says, "No, it's we've checked it with our fact checkers," and they say no. The analyzer says no. Of course, modern AI is so good that it's virtually indistinguishable now. But what's that? I can't even read what I've written here. Now, they've actually, what they did was WardX actually kidnapped Daniel's girlfriend and held her for ransom, but then he managed to escape with her, and he manages to retrieve the data as well. It's amazing how he managed to do that, but he did. But what happens is he'll go this way. Now, Jane was a novice nun and left the order. She lost her calling and left the order, but she goes back to the convent where there's this old lady called Sister Mora, who you've seen in the trailer, and she's a pretty typical nun. She's very caring to Jane, but then she looks at Daniel like he's a piece of dirt. I think these nuns are basically just religious feminists. But anyway, she says, "I care for Jane, but I'm not going to ask you any questions because I don't care for you," or something like that. Now, as I said, the WardX people are just like so typical. They're very. It's. I think it's a. Some might say it's a cliche. I think it's kind of a caricature. Maybe it's needed because you have to have them looking like this. Because how else do you present these kinds of people? They're all wearing black suits. They drive black cars very fast and very close together. very dangerously, like in a big long convoy. It's like bumper to bumper at 70 miles an hour. It reminds me of Resident Evil, the Umbrella Corporation. It's just like that. And what also happens is that these animals keep appearing. The cardinal obviously appears, flies in through the window, and lands on Margaret and Jackson's table. But then they appear elsewhere, like when they reach the old house, which is not Gillian and Barry's. This is not a sequel to Close Encounters. It's not. It has similar themes, similar structure, similar plot structure, but it's not Close Encounters. It's not a sequel. No, all different universe completely. You see a deer suddenly appearing outside. Just deer suddenly are there appearing, and it reminds me of that. I mentioned this when I reviewed the trailers on this channel. It reminds me of Leave the World Behind. Only this time they're not real deer. You see, and you see there's another scene where there's a fox as well. And again, this is where they've done their homework. I'll tell you. They have done their homework because these are screen memories. Very often it's owls. Owls are the most common animal that experiencers see, and it's what they're really, of course, are encountering are aliens being abducting them, but they see them as animals almost as a fake perception, which is induced. It's an induced fake perception by the ETs themselves, just so that they don't just try and keep the person calm. Interesting. There's lots of reflections in this film. I mean, so for example, there's a lot of scenes of characters looking into mirrors, although they're reflected in glass. It's interesting, again, like I said, that Scanlan is a very, very good villain. He's a very complex villain. And you know that he was very fond of Hugo, because they give the list of these defectors, about 20 defectors from Wardex who've gone renegade. They've walked out, left the organisation, and they're now going to do disclosure. But one of them is Hugo Wakefield, and then when Scanlan is told this, his reaction is extraordinary. He goes, "Hugo?" And there's a look of shock on his face, and then the glass door slides shut in his office, and you see a reflection of Hugo's face from the computer screen, out of focus, in the office, in the glass office door. And you can see the shock on his face, because this is a kind of et tu brute moment. It's pretty clear what's happened is Scanlan actually and Hugo are actually very, very close professional collaborators and friends. And Scanlan has this kind of idea that, you know, Hugo's, maybe other people, there's other people he doesn't trust, who he suspects of betraying him, but he can always rely on Hugo. He can always rely on Hugo Wakefield. And the shock when he realises he can't is like, well, oh my God, not Hugo, it's betrayal, it's hurt. Do you know what I mean? It's, Scanlan feels terribly let down. And later on they like have a conversation, and it's like that. I'll find a little bit of trivia. There's a scene in a hospital, because after Margaret collapses and starts making weird noises and collapses, she's given an MRI scan, and she has to escape from the hospital when Wardex come after her. You see there's an old lady in a hospital bed that they burst into someone's private room in the course of their escape. Now apparently, I didn't know who it was, can't remember the name, but she's a classic Australian actress who's been in loads of things, probably Prisoner Cell Block H, and she's a really old lady. She's in her 90s now, and so they cast her. She's uncredited, but they cast her for that role of that old lady. And her name's Ruth. She's not in the credits. Now, I'm going through my notes. And then once they're at the old house, the farmhouse, Daniel shows Jane, who's played by Eve Hewson, an Irish actress. Again, crossing the Atlantic for Spielberg. He shows Jane some of the videos, including this one where they're torturing this alien, and Scanlan is being utterly ruthless about it. He's just saying, no anaesthetic, just keep the electric shocks going, or something like that. They're torturing the alien to do some experiment on it. I'll come out here. And yeah, and then there's this MacGuffin, this alien artifact, which is like this wedge-shaped, peg-shaped object, where this crop circle symbol appears on the side of it, glowing, and it's the same crop circle that appears around Daniel in the field, which you see in the trailer. It's the same crop circle symbol. That scene with Daniel in the field is based on the Whaley footage, the Oliver's Castle. Do you know the Oliver's Castle footage where you see a crop circle appearing, which, you know, most people who've studied it say is real. It's not been tampered with. I mean, there's so much. This is basically a ufological potpourri. There was so much in here, and as I said, if you're new to the subject, there's not enough time to explain it all. Although I got more out of it this time, I did. And it's funny enough that, you see, this particular device gives the characters the ability to what they call dive. Diving means that they can remote view somebody and even appear and control them, even control their bodies. Like puppeteers, you know. And we find out then that Daniel's an experiencer, because Scanlan can't actually dive on him. He's blocked off, but he does dive on Jane, and he talks to her. You see him just sitting in the house with Jane. This is in the trailer too, and that's not him there. And their eyes change colour. That's how you know they're doing this diving thing. And I'll have to come back here and do some more of my graffiti video. No time now. There's you know that I'm just looking through this, but you know that there's this moment where there's this kind of mistrust between Daniel and Jane, because when Daniel leaves, Daniel has to leave the house to go and find a signal. That's when the crop circle thing happens. He's about to walk out, leaving the bag of database discs, or whatever they are, thumb drives, on the table with Jane, and then he stops and he comes back and he takes it. He doesn't trust her, because you see, Jane and he have this conversation where she puts up a very skeptical viewpoint herself of disclosure. She actually puts together the skeptical argument, very much not unlike the one that Scanlon put together. Disorder, chaos, religion collapsing. And as a person of faith herself, a believer and a former nun, she really feels this very strongly. And then Daniel is like debating with her, and that's when he takes the bag. He doesn't leave it with her. And this could have been what may have made him more vulnerable to Scanlon, because he tells Jane to take a knife and say, look, you might have to stop Daniel yourself, meaning you'll have to use that knife on him. There is humour in this. There are jokes. So, for example, like I say, Margaret she gets a phone call from Hugo on her mobile phone. At the end of the phone call, because Hugo knows who she is when he sees when he sees her making those noises. And he then tells her to destroy the phone so she can't be traced, because that call will be traced. And so she has to destroy. So she gets Jackson to run the car over with it, but it's really, really difficult. He keeps missing it, and she says, "No, go back and do it again." Eventually, after 3 tries, he actually manages to drive his car over the phone and destroys it. There is religious symbolism in this. For example, when Jane fights back against the possession by Scanlon, she stabs her hand. There's a scene earlier on where she's holding a crucifix, and the crucifix cuts her hand, and it looks like stigmata on her hand, wounds on her hand. Now, eventually, what happens is that Jackson is being very skeptical. He's not like Jane. He's far less open-minded, and as we've discovered that he's kind of fallen out of love with Margaret, and he's thinking of leaving her. And so Margaret finds that out, and during the course of their journey, he becomes more and more distant from her, and eventually she abandons him. Daniel does automatic writing. Now, this again is something that means these people have done their homework. He's writing down mathematical codes and things like that, which of course, Jason Andrews did. If you ever read Jason, My Indigo Child, or Walking Between Worlds, Belonging to None by Anne Andrews, things like that. What happens is, and then Daniel is recaptured eventually, but he gives one of the artifacts to Jane. He gives the artifact that he's stolen to Jane, because even though they get the data back for a while, and he does recover the data, Daniel. The artifact is actually, because there's several of these artifacts, I think there's 3 of them, and the second one gets destroyed after Margaret uses it at one point. But there's a third one. And what we see is it's an amazing scene, actually, where Margaret rescues Daniel using her powers, and her powers are very simple. She just simply she does her own version of diving, which happens naturally. She just looks into their eyes, and then she starts talking to them, and reaches them emotionally. It's an amazing scene. Like, for example, she stands in front of Scanlon, and Scanlon sees his wife who died. And we don't know if it's this channeling, or is this impersonation, or is this just it's hard to know exactly what that is. Telepathy. And there's a book by Anita Moorjani, is this author who's written about empathy, and I really want to read that book, and I want to see her interview. She's just done an interview on Gaia. I always get notifications for Gaia, even though I don't subscribe. I'm not going to subscribe to Gaia just for that, but what a... You know, I'd like to see someone stand up for the empaths. I think this film does stand up for the empaths. Because, you know, we have been dealt a pretty bad hand, haven't we? We empaths. We get blamed for everything. We get scorned, we get called weak, we get called, like, antisocial, everything. And this film, I think, may redress that balance. But, you see, they're not giving up because Boyd goes after them in the car. And this is very interesting, a scene, because... Margaret and Daniel stop by a level crossing, and Boyd comes up behind them in his big 2CV, or his big SUV. They got like a little hatchback, and he's got an SUV. And there's a train comes along, and he starts pushing them towards the train. He rams them and tries to push them towards the train. Now, we've seen this before. I mentioned this in my trailer review. This happened in Steven Spielberg's first movie, his 1971 made-for-TV classic Duel. In this case, it's a lorry that tries to pull David Mann, and he's got a slightly bigger car, like a saloon, and he tries to push this car against the train, thus killing David Mann, and fails. In this case, he succeeds, but Boyd succeeds in doing this to Margaret and Daniel, but they manage to escape onto the train. Very dramatic, exciting scene. The car's being dragged along by the train, and they're trying to climb off it and onto the train. And of course, another train is coming in the opposite direction. Of course, at that very moment. And they find themselves in this crate. It's full of musical instruments for some reason. It's getting this container. I don't know why, if that's significant. But poor Margaret has a panic attack, and Daniel calms her down. They heal each other, actually. There's like scenes when they kind of heal each other. There's great chemistry between those two, Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor. There really is, because they have this affinity because they're both experiencers, and they're both like, I mean, it's hinted they're kind of alien hybrids. And then there's this amazing dialogue, because Scanlon appears in front of Hugo, and they have this discussion, and Scanlon is just basically trying to persuade Hugo not to do it. Firstly, he's expressing his hurt at the betrayal by Hugo. Hugo's the person that Scanlon kind of is closest to and worked with. Is kind of like his right-hand man. I mean, Boyd is kind of like sidekick, but he's more the kind of action guy, who's the security guard, bodyguard kind of thing. But Hugo's like an intellectual brother. And Scanlon says, it will destroy, there'll just be chaos. And Hugo's going, this 79-year cover-up has to end. People are starved for the truth. And then he says the aliens are empaths, he says. This is what David Icke objected to. And it turns out that Hugo, Scanlon talks about something called in vivo 17, vivo, which means alive, in vivo means alive, meaning it's a living alien. And they says, you set him free, didn't you? And it turns out that Hugo had actually freed one of the aliens 5 years earlier. You freed him and you lied to me for 5 years. And, yeah. So Hugo actually set one of the aliens free, and that comes back later. And then Scanlon gives another of these famous quotes. It's this information is a virus to which humanity has no immunity. At the same time, there's this religious aspect, because Maura and Jane have this phone conversation where Jane says, you know, is it just us? I mean, God doesn't mention aliens in the Bible, does he? And then there's a Bible quote from Genesis where there is actually a hint that God has made life elsewhere, because it talks about life on the earth. And then Maura is a believer in extraterrestrial life and says, well, that's just God's way of saying just on the earth, and there's more. I don't know what the exact quote was, I can't remember, but it says that they created life on the earth as opposed to elsewhere, hinting there's something elsewhere. And she says to Jane something interesting. You've not lost your faith in God, you've lost your faith in people. Because as we found out earlier on, Jane is considering taking the pro-disclosure point of view, which may, like I said, weaken her to Scanlon's influence. And then there's this amazing scene, a very emotional scene, where Margaret and Daniel are then rescued by Hugo's team, and they've got fire engines. And Santiago, one of the other guys who leads the team, says, "No one gets in the way of a fire engine." And then they take them to their headquarters, and in their headquarters, Hugo has recreated a wooden model of Margaret's house because he needs her to relive the experience. And it turns out that Margaret was abducted when she was 10 years old, and when she was taken to the spaceship, there's a little boy lying beside her, maybe a couple of years younger. He's sort of 7 or 8, and that is Daniel. And that's why when they look at each other, they say, "I know you." This gives them their affinity, this kind of bond. And you see, it's all, again, they've done their research because Margaret, as a little 10-year-old, doesn't see aliens first. She sees a deer in her bedroom. You've seen this, it's in the trailer. And then what follows is what Stephen Greenstreet calls the Christmas card scene, where they're walking through the snow towards this Hansel and Gretel house. Again, it's screen memory, because she says the snow was warm. She walked through the glass of her window. This Linda Napolitano said when she was levitated, she was levitated through the window. Linda's just died, sadly, by the way. Through the glass window. The window wasn't open, she just went through the glass. And Margaret says the snow was warm under my feet, which of course is impossible. Snow's cold. Warm snow is water, basically. And then, of course, it's all screen memory, and they're lying on these... They go into this Hansel and Gretel house, and it's really a spaceship, and they're lying on these examination tables, and the deer turns into an alien. But it's very, very moving. It's and again, you see the lens flare in this scene. Of course, it's not. You don't need to have lens flare, and it's obviously been put in deliberately, like it was in Close Encounters. Maybe it's a Spielbergian style. I don't know. And then, what's next? Yeah. Can't read that. And then there's the Wardex people catch up with them, in their headquarters. But they use the artifact, the device, to make themselves invisible so they can escape. And then they go to it's called KCX, Kansas City something, and it is the TV studio where Margaret works, where she presents the weather forecast. And then they do this, and then basically they walk in there, and they it's very simple. They walk in there. Margaret uses her powers on people to persuade them through her empathy, and then she says, "We're going to do a special announcement, and we're going to just give this all to the world." This is basically catastrophic disclosure in this film. This is the very definition of catastrophic disclosure. There's no official sanction. There's no official declassification. Even though at some point the newsreader, this is interesting, there's a newsreader on ABC, well, I think it's a real newsreader they cast, a real newsreader. At one point she sort of says this is recently declassified footage. It's not declassified, it's leaked. So this is catastrophic disclosure. But they basically, they load up the data onto their tapes, onto their servers, and then they just they broadcast it onto the air, and they syndicate it to BBC, CNN. It's going all over the world, and everyone just stands there watching it. You see the nuns standing there staring at the TV screen. One of them's praying the rosary. People standing on tube trains, in the street, on an aeroplane, just watching their mobile phones, watching this stuff. It's like an epiphany moment. It is something apocalyptic. Because the Wardex people try to stop them because they shut off the electricity, but Hugo's thought of that, and he's got his own people running the backup generator, which he does. But then the Wardex then blow up the generator. But then suddenly Jane comes out of the crowd with the last device, the third device, which Daniel gave to her when they part company, and gives it to Margaret, and Margaret uses it to start the electricity up again. And they do and she says, "Welcome, this is Disclosure Day." She does this report. She wants to be like a news anchor rather than a weather girl as well. She's auditioning to be a news anchor. And I think this is going to help her application. and she does this amazing story, and then I'm wondering, because there's so much is dumped in this. There's so much you see at that point. You see multiple screens showing multiple things. You know, some of it is real. I know some of it is real because it's like real footage that's already been released by ATIP and things like that. It's the ATIP footage. Some of that is on there, but then you see other things as well, which are clearly just part of the movie. But I do wonder if some of the more spectacular stuff might be real, and we're going to find out that it's real at some point. We're going to find out that. On one of the screens, at some point, someone's going to say, you know, that's the final scene in Disclosure Day, where you see all this data on all these TV screens, different videos of planes encountering craft. There's police, there's Roswell. There's also the famous. There's also and indeed Daniel shows this to Jane earlier, the famous scene where in 1973 when Richard Nixon, recently US president, actually takes Jackie Gleason, the actor and comedian, to Homestead Air Force Base and shows him aliens. That's actually dramatised. I mean, it's a well-known alien story, but it's actually dramatised in this movie, in this video. And what's this here? I can't even read what I've written here. And then I'll just read what I can and remember. If I remember any more, I'll add it later. But there's one thing I did see was this big, like, triangular-shaped object, which I do wonder if it was inspired by the Pentech incident. I don't know. I'll see if Kaz and Gary, when they watch the film, they can actually tell us. Yeah, it's. And then just at the end, I mean, I didn't notice it the first time, but when Hugo goes to and his team go to the generator, they go to guard the generator before the Wardex people take it over. You see this white lorry, just short, like a short truck, just pulling into the loading bay, and you wonder what's in it, and you find out, because what happened to Vivo 17, the alien? And it turns out that Hugo's been looking after him all this time, and he appears in the studio, and it's I don't want to describe. This is something I really don't want to give you spoilers over, because it's an incredible moment. It's the last scene of the movie, literally the very last thing that happens in the movie, where the alien comes in and talks to Margaret, and Margaret whispers something to Daniel. You never hear what it is, but then he also looks at Scanlan, and you know that's the alien that Scanlan's team were torturing. Finally, the reaction Scanlan in the final scene, what Scanlan does is really extraordinary, because at the moment he's really working hard to try and put a stop to this disclosure moment, this catastrophic disclosure drop. He's really working hard. I mean, he has his team shut off the power supply. When Hugo starts the backup generator, they then blow up the backup generator. And then he goes in, and you think at that moment, he's won. You think at that moment that he's won, but that's when Jane then gives Margaret the device, and she uses the device to start up its powers, to start up the electricity again. What this device can do and what it's capable of, I don't know, but it's really extraordinary. And it's funny that for that moment, Scanlan kind of stops and he just sits down. And Andy Boyd says, "Aren't you going to try and stop them?" And Scanlan just gives him a kind of weird look. At that moment, Scanlan, I think, it's really interesting his reaction at that point, because, of course, he realises he's lost at that point, because Margaret has the device, this device of power. He doesn't have his. And I think also, I just get the sense that at that moment, he suddenly he suddenly gets it. He suddenly understands. He suddenly realises that the tide of history has just turned against him. And it's funny because there's no hint that he believes this beforehand. There's no sense that that he thinks this to begin with. I mean, he's totally dedicated to what he believes is the right thing. But then at that moment, it's almost like he suddenly flips, and this does happen where people, the doubts that people have will like grow very, very slowly inside them, and they don't actually express themselves until it's almost like there's a critical mass, and it kind of tips a balance. I talked about this in my Skeptic, when I did my Skeptic analysis, and I went to the QED conference. At that moment, he just sits down and he just says, as if acknowledging defeat, but also maybe we should just let them give this a chance. Maybe they're right. And Boyd being his like less intelligent and more all meat no brains type bloke, says, "Aren't you going to stop them?" And he can't believe that his boss has kind of given up. And then he just goes, he scoffs and turns his back on his camera, disgusted. Boyd, as I said, looks very much like Daniel. Obviously, they play a different role, so you know they're not the same person, but it can get a bit confusing in the trailers. And then the alien, and that's the very final scene, and then the final shot is just Margaret. It's just Margaret. It's not like saying, "Listen." It's amazing, and that's an amazing moment. And it cuts to the credits. I watched all the credits again. I looked for names I recognised, maybe people who acted as consultants within the ufology world. There are none. I thought there might be some. Maybe Danny Sheehan has signed an NDA and he's helped Spielberg. I don't know, but no, nothing like that. I thought that was interesting actually because if you remember, we did that read party of that book, the Sidney Sheldon's The Doomsday Conspiracy, and JJ and Desiree Hurtak acted as UFO consultants for him. They actually assist him with the research. Yeah, that's it. As I said, those are the spoilers. But I'm hoping by now you've watched me, you've seen it, because you need to watch it without the spoilers. So hopefully, I'm assuming you viewers have already seen it. But anyway, I'll probably think of something. If I think of anything else, I'll add it to this video. I'm going to go home and I'm going to do the critics. I might analyse David Icke's video. I'm not sure, because David Icke has said something. I left a comment under his video actually, which I think is misguided, and I'll explain. But anyway, let's go and have a look at what the critics have to say. Alright, well, let's see what the critics have to say, shall we? Yeah, let's have a look. Okay. This is Rotten Tomatoes, of course, and there's no popcornometer yet because literally the film's just been released today on general release. But critics, 82% on the critics, not bad. Fresh, not bad, that's cool. And the consensus, humanistic variation of one of Steven Spielberg's most revisited themes. Disclosure Day's breathless pursuit of optimism in an age of conspiracy gets its biggest boost from not career highlight work by Emily Blunt. That's probably true. Yeah, she's kind of the star of the show, I'd say. The others were good. I mean, all the acting was top notch in this. But yeah, that's Rotten Tomatoes. The Metro. This is a silly review, and it's full of spoilers, by the way. So don't read this unless you've seen the movie. What's a Metro voice? Steven Spielberg's controversial Disclosure Day will enrage conspiracy theorists. Well, that's by Tory Brazier, which didn't enrage me, and I'm a conspiracy theorist. There's a particular point during Steven Spielberg's new summer blockbuster Disclosure Day that sent chills up my spine. It will also do the same for alien conspiracy theorists, but likely for different reasons. While always entertaining, it's also complex and controversial and hard in some ways to place among his remarkable back catalogue. I don't know about that. It seems, in many ways, it's very typical of him, But Spielberg is too talented a filmmaker to produce a bad movie, and Disclosure Day absolutely isn't one, but it is going to split audiences, given its unwillingness to give us that much that's cut and dried. Well, that's something I say I've noticed, because I think primarily as I've said before, there was too much packed into it. They were throwing several dozen different ufological concepts at us in the space of a 2-hour, 20-minute movie. There's just not enough scope there to explain everything. There's not enough time. Anyway, has anyone plugged into the grid of conspiracy theorists who believe the US government secretly feeds Hollywood information about major events before they're revealed to help acclimatise the public to the possibility? Which is which actually, yeah, I think they do that. Whether this is a part of it or not, I don't know. It's open to debate. Well, they will no doubt leave convinced that this film was created to condition audiences for future Alien announcements. Well, maybe that's kind of a possibility, and indeed, that is something I think I should possibly consider. Brace yourself for the veritable feeding frenzy. I'll just open this highlight here to follow on online forums, despite Spielberg denying any outside influence on his original story. Indeed, we have here Steven Spielberg actually saying here he rejects disclosure date alien conspiracy theories. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But I think it is possible that Steven Spielberg is whether he knows it or not. I mean, this could be something subconscious or something he's just tapped into on a psychic level. But I think it's possible that Steven Spielberg, is in some way preparing. Is part of this process, this theatrical process of organised disclosure. If so, then I think he's doing it for. I think he's doing it for benevolent reasons. I think he does want. I think he likes the idea that we should know the truth, that people should know the truth. I think he's a decent guy, basically. Again, then that comes back to the fact that whether if he does think, oh, go away, if he does think that, is he being used by the kind of like last card Project Bluebeam people, which again is something you've got to consider, definitely got to consider that. Oh, it then goes on to say there have also been rumours that Disclosure Date is a sequel to Spielberg's 1977 classic Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but it's not. But the director does consider it a thematic bookend to that film. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, it's actually not a sequel to Close Encounters. There was a sense that it might be, for reasons I've explained. The house and everything, Gillian and Barry's house. The country house in the film is like a copy of that. It's very similar. Obviously, it's just scenery because you see a car crashing through it, whereas in the Close Encounters, the Gillian and Barry, the outside shots of Gillian and Barry's house are done at a real house, somebody's real house. They allowed the filmmakers to come in and use the garden to film in. But yeah, it's not connected in the same. It's not in the same universe as that film. It's a completely separate story. None of the characters are the same. But yeah, thematic bookend would be fair enough, I think. Yeah. And it says, obviously we're in a similar extraterrestrial territory once more. In fact, alone, that comes with plenty of anticipation. Thanks to Spielberg in the realm, yeah, his track record. And then this is where you get kind of, you get a few spoilers here, but it says, it is a sci-fi action movie. And it is indeed, as I said, it would satisfy Dan Brown fans. It's very, very fast-paced. Never slows down, full of action. It's a chase movie, basically. It's been compared to North by Northwest by Alfred Hitchcock, and I think that's probably true. Yeah. And here's Noah Scanlon here. He's the bad guy. Yeah. it's pretty good. It's a pretty. He does that pretty well, I think. He does that pretty well. And it goes on to just explain. There's Margaret's breakdown there, where she suddenly starts clicking and making weird noises. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's the Metro. Now let's move on to the Guardian. What they've got to say about it. Well, let's see. Let me just predict what the Guardian are going to say. Not enough people of colour, despite the fact it's got Coleman Domingo. Not enough women, even though the two of the main characters are women. The central character, or probably the most high profile character, is female as well. And it says here, this is Peter Bradshaw, a white male. Ugh, a white male. Disclosure Day review: Close Encounters of a Deferred Kind in Spielberg's Conspiracy Spectacular. And he gives it a 4 out of 5. Oh, that's good. Humans have been secretly abusing aliens for almost 80 years in this big-hearted thriller. Blah-de-blah. The old school is the new school in this very enjoyable and entirely ridiculous space alien conspiracy adventure. From screenwriter David Koepp and director Steven Spielberg. It is cheerfully mischievous and deadly serious in equal measure. Yeah. And this is, he says, it has something of Hitchcock from North by Northwest. You're not familiar with North by Northwest. It's the one with the guy on the train. He's a Cary Grant. He's on a train, and he gets off the train, and this plane tries to run him over. It's a good film. Christopher Nolan from Inception. I've never seen Inception. Um, and Spielberg from pretty much every movie he's ever made. Well, I wouldn't include War of the Worlds, but there you go. And then this is interesting. He says here, he disclosed that hand on heart, he really believes in its contents, in the way I imagine C.S. Lewis believed in Aslan and the secret Narnian sovereignty of Peter and Susan. Right, that's a reference to Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. In the sense he believes in its contents because it's like a fantasy, and so he doesn't really believe it's true, but he just believes it very much as a kind of like a myth, on a mythological kind of level. I don't know. I think Spielberg actually is a. I think he's a woo-woo. I think he's one of us. He's a conspiracist. He would never use that phrase to describe himself. But, if he's going to get very, very excited over the 2017 New York Times article, that's what inspired him to do this. That's where he first got the idea for this movie. It's got to be kind of like he's got to be somewhere down the path that we've gone down, definitely. And he says, with heartfelt idealism, Spielberg asks us to believe that should the ultimate truth come out, people everywhere would be terribly upset at the way captured aliens have been vivisected. I suspect that would be very far down our the list of our concerns. Well, yeah. Yeah, I suppose there is. I mean, I said, Close Encounters when I reviewed that. It's a very idealistic movie. It is like alien invasion in Glastonbury, and there's an element of that in this as well. But you see, we don't know because of the very truncated way the film climaxes. As I said, it needs an epilogue, and it doesn't have one. We don't actually know what people's reaction is. We just see them staring at TV screens and their mobile phones, and that's it. Then the film ends. It's an ending as abrupt as CE3. As I said, CE3 needed an epilogue, and this needed an epilogue, and it doesn't have one. Maybe there just wasn't time. I mean, you can't. It's 2 hours 20 minutes long. What are you supposed to do? Make it a 3-hour movie? No studio would ever allow that. Emily Blunt gives a really funny and hyperactive star performance as Margaret Fairchild. Yes. Oh, she was really, really good. Like I said, she's like Roy Neary. She's an adorable kind of like. Sort of like slightly immature, fun-loving, but big-hearted kind of person, like Roy Neary. Yeah, and then there's a lot of there's a lot of spoilers here, but the clicking noises like Flipper the dolphin. Well, dolphins make those noises, yeah. Yeah, and it talks about Daniel, his background, blah de blah. There we go. Hugo Roon. I sort of said Hugo Roon. Hugo Wakefield. Yeah, that's Coleman Domingo's character. Whatever happened to Hugo Roon? I always say that, don't I? Anyway, that's the Guardian. That's actually not bad for the Guardian. They didn't complain about its diversity or anything like that. They didn't check its Bechdel score or anything like that to check it for ideological purity. Nothing like that. Didn't complain about the Christian themes. That's I'd say for the Guardian, that's quite a good review. And then finally, let's have a look at the Telegraph. That's a Telegraph voice. Spielberg has lost the plot. Disclosure Day is shot with all the director's signature elegance, but the plot is woolly and a bungled mix of solemn and silly. Oh dear, this is Robbie Collin in the Telegraph, the Tory graph. Let's have a look. It's behind a paywall. Forget it. I'm not forking out 15p to read this shit. Oh well, there you go. That's the Tory graph for you. And that's the reviews. That's what the critics have to say. Of course, there's a lot more you can check out for yourself, but that's quite a good overview of the general critics' consensus. Well, hello everyone. Now there is one more review and one more critic I want to examine in some more detail. And it is, of course, as I alluded to earlier, the one and only David Icke. Yes, our Dave has been to see the movie and he's got his own opinions on it. So let's have a look at what he has to say. Here we go. Right. By the way, I'm claiming fair use on this, and I may not play all of it. Might just play some of it. I'll put it on as fast.
I've just watched the Steven Spielberg film, Disclosure Day, which came out in England this afternoon. And I said beforehand it would be a psyop. And my goodness me, that's what it turned out to be.
So it turned out to be a psyop. All right, David. When I heard this, I suppose I was a little bit disappointed. As you know, I'm a big fan of David. I've got an entire portal about him, and I've made videos about him, and I think he was very, very important to me as a part of my conspiratorial, paranormal, ufological, spiritual education. In fact, he's probably one of the most influential people on my life, on my life, and indeed, I've got a lot of respect for him, and he's said some very, very good things. But he immediately launched into this saying, "It's a psyop." He claimed it would be one, and it is one. Well, we'll see.
I said in the
I want to know why. I'm curious to know why.
The last few days of 2025 that 2026 would be the year of the alien. Why? Because I started to see that Steven Spielberg was putting out this movie.
Well, that's not the only reason. I mean, I also believe that 2026 is turning out to be an absolutely cornerstone, seminal year in the UFO alien awareness. Trying to find the right words, you know what I mean? Disclosure, basically. I said that as well, but I mean, it wasn't just because of Spielberg's movie. In fact, I thought the movie by Steven Spielberg was more of a reaction to that than a cause. Steven Spielberg is, of course, motivated by his own personal success, which is absolutely fine. I think one of his motives for making this film was because he felt there was a good, strong win for raising that particular sale, and he was right, and he's perfectly entitled to do so. That's not his only motive, though. He's not a grifter. He's an artist.
Disclosure Day, and it would fit perfectly with what we've been seeing for the last few years now, which is a gradual, if you like, authority acceptance of UFOs, UAPs, and alien life as a possibility.
Oh, that's true, yes. Disclosure Day is essentially it's a product of that. It's a product of this changing awareness. As I've said it before, from December 2017, everything changed, everything shifted. And this movie by Spielberg is a part of that. I mean, the question is why. I think this is where David and I are going to completely disagree. Why that has happened is the important point.
Now, I remember back in the 1990s, when I was traveling around America, that the authority dismissal of the whole idea was constant. Everything from weather balloons to, oh, you're talking about little green men.
Yes.
No, I'm actually not. I'm talking about a non-human force operating ultimately from another dimension that is manipulating and controlling.
These two, this is an important point. I'll come back to this. David is talking about two separate phenomena here. Both are real.
Has indeed created the simulated reality that we think is real. And that dismissal went on, and then suddenly...
Yeah, but I mean, they dismissed both. I mean, they dismissed the little green men and flying saucers and the nature of reality and the consciousness behind it. Yeah, they did. They dismissed both. David, I think, he believes that people are conflating the two when they're not.
The rhetoric changed. And just within literally weeks of saying that 2026 will be the year of the alien, because of the Spielberg film, because they were going to hook it to that for sure, you had the Trump regime and the Pentagon announcing they were going to release more and more footage of what we used to call UFOs and the possible existence of alien life.
Yeah, and that's not a coincidence. David is right. That is no coincidence. Absolutely not.
And so what you can do when you are seeking to manipulate the population with a fake story about alien activity.
Is it fake, though? How much of it is fake? I mean, I agree, we've got to be on our guard against fakery, and I'll say more about that, but what if it's for real? What if it's real, David? What if the good guys, the white hats, are now in control of this agenda and the Illuminati have lost control? Have you considered that?
Is you can either make them terrified of the aliens coming, or you can go another way and make people sympathetic, empathetic, and accepting of a benevolent non-human force. And what Spielberg has done is go the second way. So what you see in Disclosure...
You see, well, when it comes to extraterrestrials, I mean, extraterrestrials, as I said, are both of those things. Some species do seem to be something we should be concerned about. They have exhibited hostile intentions to planet Earth and human beings. But there are others that are not. There are others that are very empathetic. The majority seem to be, I'd say, studying this in a neutral, detached observational way. That seems to be the majority, I would say, in terms of their motives. They seem to be particularly interested in things like nuclear weapons, for whatever reason, I don't know. Some people say because they want to stop us blowing ourselves up. Others say this is a reconnaissance mission against our most potent defenses. I don't know. It depends which species you're talking about here. But the fact of the matter is that ETs, extraterrestrials, there's many, many different kinds. They come from many, many different locations, and they seem to have a wide variety of agendas and desires. They certainly exhibit a very wide variety of behaviors, I must say. But I think David is now, when I say ETs and aliens, I'm not talking about gods or godlike beings, which is what came up in the film Disclosure Day. Jane was concerned that people would start worshipping as deities rather than worshipping God. David thinks that these aliens are basically symbolic of simply the Illuminati and the consciousness behind the Illuminati that controls our reality. Both those things are actually misunderstandings. When I say aliens and ETs and when I say extraterrestrials, UFOs, I'm talking about craft and beings that are like us but come from other places, not gods, creations of God, if you want to say that, in the same way that we are. I think this is why I think David is going down the wrong track here.
Today is a very sympathetic portrayal of non-human activity and a very empathetic kind of portrayal. And indeed, the word empathy comes up in relation to these. This non.
Oh yeah, of course, Hugo actually says it. These aliens believe that empathy is an evolutionary advantage. The opposite. It's the exact opposite of what humans believe. Most humans, because I think I made this point. I think I made this point before. No doubt I'll make it again. But we empaths are considered the ones with the disorder. We are called weak. We're called cowardly. We're called naive. We're called stupid. We're called detached. We're called unrealistic. And this is one of the things I like about Disclosure Day is finally we empaths are getting some good press. And I'm surprised David doesn't understand. I hope David would actually appreciate that, but he doesn't, obviously.
Non-human race that is, again, portrayed in the film. It's like the aliens have empathy and they're telling humans they don't have empathy and they need to have empathy or the world will go the way it's going.
Well, some ETs actually do say that. Not all of them. Some actually do tell us that. And there's many, many experiencers that actually have that message passed on to them by the aliens. For real. Indeed, Spielberg has done his research. And as you'll find out, in fact, I'll tell you another little clip later that shows that at least one of the cast members has also done some research.
And that is an absolute inversion of the situation. Now, I'm not saying...
What? He's... all right, okay. He's an inversion of the situation, that we are the ones that have the empathy and it's the aliens that don't. Well, I think when David says it's the inversion of the situation, he means that the prison water consciousness that he used to call the prison water consciousness, it's controlling the matrix of reality. I think that's what he means. In which case he's right, but I think he's conflating that again. He's conflating that with the actual ETs.
That there's not other life out there. I have no doubt there is. That is benevolent, but the manipulators of human society, human reality, human perception of reality, are not benevolent. They are anything but. They are empathy deleted. So you can see the inversion in the film where
you see the mistake he's making. Do you understand how he's confusing the two?
Aliens are empathetic as opposed to humans who are not. And so we are seeing the perceptual preparation of people for the acceptance of non-human life. In the film's portrayal, an empathetic, sympathetic portrayal, but in other ways they will use fear as a weapon against humanity too. So the fact that we are having these disclosures, this disclosure footage of, oh, what's this? We can't explain it. And the Spielberg film out at the same time is clearly and obviously no accident. And what is going to happen is this movie will...
It is, I don't believe it's an accident either, but not for the reasons that David thinks.
Will trigger a lot of interest, a lot of discussion and debate about the alien presence, exactly as it's meant to do. And it will be, all of it, including the government disclosure, it will be a misdirection, this film certainly is, a misdirection of what's actually happening. And what is that? That we have a reality that we think...
Yeah, okay, I get this. Now, I must say that I don't 100% disagree that there's some kind of psyop going on here. You see, if so, then I suspect that Steven Spielberg is an innocent participant. But I've never ever denied this. Many people try to put words in my mouth or take words out of my mouth and claim that I've never said this. But it could be that they are planning something which you call like the last card, as Carol Rosin called it, what Wernher von Braun said to her. That is Project Bluebeam, the fake alien invasion. That's always something we've got to be on our guard against. At the same time, if the White Hats have taken this process away from the Illuminati, if the White Hats have decided to go for a controlled disclosure in stages, preparing the ground culturally and psychologically first, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to try and miss that opportunity because we're too cynical, or we're in some kind of backslapper pissing contest? That's the problem I have with it. That's why we have to tread a very narrow path between excessive cynicism and excessive trustingness. You know? So, I'll let David carry on.
Is real, we think is solid and physical, when actually it's not. And more scientists are beginning to grasp that fact, not least through quantum physics, but also through the increasing realization that this reality is some kind of simulation. And it is. And it's being
that's true. He's kind of going off onto another topic here. I don't know if we need to actually finish this. I'll just skip forward a little bit.
To enslave us by enslaving our perception. Everything is control of perception to see reality, self, the whatsoever. I don't think somehow numbers of videos that have been hacked by people who want to get the message out, and then it's put out right across the networks. I don't think somehow, I feel it in my water, that would happen.
He's describing the final scene in the film. Let's go back a little bit.
Of the truth. It's also, watching it, a very cheesy story, a very not credible story, and involves the sudden release of fantastic numbers of videos that have been hacked by people who want to get the message out, and then it's put out right across the networks. I don't think somehow, I feel it in my water.
Is he right there? I mean, how realistic is this scenario that you see in the film? They simply turn up at a TV studio. I suppose it's because of Margaret's superpowers and the fact that she has the device, which helps, of course. But is it realistic to think that they could actually get away with that? And if they did, what would there be? Would it not be possible to somehow pull that back? I don't know. You see, because it's very similar to the scenario in The Running Man, where if you remember in the film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, at the end they have this big expose videotape which they put in the machine, and then everyone sees this. What if after the end of that broadcast, some boffin, working for the government comes up on front of the TV and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, for the last half an hour, you have been watching a very, very carefully orchestrated hoax, the biggest hoax in media history. Some very silly little students on a drunken night out managed to hack into all the TV networks in the world through this very, very unique, revolutionary form of computer electronic fraud. And then when they'd done that, they delivered a whole load of artificially intelligent created documents and videos and things like that. And sorry about that, normal service will be resumed as soon as possible. Oh, and we're going to sack that newsreader who was telling you all about it." I mean, is that? Have I frozen? Okay. Is that more is that more likely to happen? I mean, I just wonder: is David right here? Is he correct? I don't know. Something to think about.
That would happen, but that's my immediate reaction to the Disclosure Day movie. It's a psyop, it's a misdirection, and it's being put out there in conjunction with these disclosure footage releases by the Trump regime, and together they are meant to misdirect you from what's really going on, which is, yes, there is a non-human force. And it's been manipulating human society all along by creating a fake reality that has become known as the Matrix, the simulation. And that is what they don't want you to know.
Okay. Well, obviously, like, I disagree. I mean, I want to explain why I disagree with David there. You see, there is a matrix. There is like a consciousness running the matrix, which, as you said, is harmful. The Illuminati, the dark forces worshipped by the Illuminati. I agree with David on that. And of course, there are beings who live within this world, this universe, which include humans. But that's, you see, the beings who live within the universe also include the aliens. They also include the aliens. Yes. There's one more thing I want to show you. Now this is a very interesting interview, which I'll just get up for you. Okay, and this is a little mini documentary here. It's got a Wikipedia box called "Full Disclosure: The Reality Behind Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day." It's only 25 minutes on NBC News. It's well worth watching. Now, there's a very interesting clip here with, I think, where was it? I think here we are. It is with Emily Blunt. Listen to what she says. This kind of proves what I was saying.
£2.63. That is what a lot of people spend on a coffee or a snack. It is also what AG.
In preparation for Disclosure Day, star Emily Blunt turned to hearings and testimonials for inspiration.
How about that, yeah?
I had never gone down the rabbit hole of looking at every congressional hearing that's taken place, every documentary, docuseries, everyone who has had a genuine experience. And it was their absolute authenticity, their peacefulness in knowing what they saw, however discredited they'd been, disvalued, kicked out of their job, called a whistleblower. I think that it was just this resonant peacefulness that they know what they saw, they've been ever shifted by it, and it just became inarguable to me. So I became invested in them, in the people who'd had these experiences.
And after decades of...
There you are, right. I said it, I told you earlier on that the cast would have researched this. I know Spielberg did. And we've just heard there that Emily Blunt, at least one of them, has actually investigated this. She's gone down the rabbit hole, as she says. She's looked at the hearings. She's probably watched videos. She may have even watched a Panmo TV for all I know. But she will have, in which case, Emily, subscribe. Thank you very much for doing that. Great job in Disclosure Day. But this, you see, that is amazing. She's now kind of, from what she just said there, she's now kind of a believer. And she's made all the same points that people do when they challenge the skeptics. So well done. That's just perfect. I'm claiming fair use on both these clips, both David Icke's and NBC's. So, yeah, it's interesting. Of all the critics, I think David is probably the most interesting one, which is why I wanted to dedicate a little bit of extra time, especially for him. I suppose we've got to contemplate a few more things. So, for example, the most important issue associated with this film, and the one that has generated the most speculation, is anything real in it? I had this idea, indeed Ron James said this last year at Contact in the Desert, that Spielberg's movie would have some kind of fourth wall breaking moment. There would be literally a scene somewhere in the film where there'd be like a narrator coming on saying, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, watching this film, what you're looking at now is real. And there'd be some irrefutable piece of evidence and drop. All sanctioned, they decided to make Steven Spielberg the disclosure guy. Someone I would trust much more than Keir Starmer or Donald Trump, I can tell you. There's nothing immediate. That moment never came in the film. So those people who are laughing at me for suggesting it or have been proved right, or have they? Because there may be something similar in there which is a bit more subtle and not yet revealed, which is one of these. In the final scene, you get this cascade, because all you the viewer don't really see very much. You see this cascade of information in little clips and bites from the position of someone in the gallery looking at all the little screens across this display board. It's a bit like the Wardex headquarters. Anyone who's worked in TV production will know that. And at the same time, you see the newsreader, and so, I mean, she's really good. The newsreader, who I think is a real newsreader on ABC, as I said earlier, her reaction is amazing, because she's like, I don't know what to say about this. We have some kind of, this is recently declassified stuff and not live, just a recording. that looks like a spaceship. Is that Roswell? And things like that. And she's completely stumped and lost for words, trying to hold back her emotions. And at one point she says, "We're not alone," and she's like weeping. Of course, the style of news presentation has changed enormously. The stoicism and calmness of the newsreaders reporting on the destruction of the World Trade Center. One of them just said, as one of the buildings came down, "I just have no words," but kept his cool. Compare that to many years earlier in New Jersey, when 1937, when the Hindenburg airship blew up. The guy reporting for the radio was crying, "Oh, the humanity, oh my God, I can feel the heat from here." He's in tears as he watches this gigantic airship burst into flames and the people inside get burnt to death. There's a dust cart behind me. But it could be that somewhere in one of those clips is something real. I mean, I know that some of them are, because I recognise a few from the recent, or not from the recent drops, from the previous drops we've had. And there's these other ones that are obviously part of the movie, just CGI stuff and that. But as I said, there's one that looks very like the Penturk incident. But then, is somewhere in there something real? And at some point we're going to find out that it's real. I do wonder. It could come out later on, because I mean the film is just still. The film is literally dropped. It's only been launched today. It's literally. This is the first night. I mean, I in this country have seen it long before people elsewhere have seen it. So, for example, right now it's about 2 p.m., 3 p.m. It's only like 10 a.m. or something in the U.S. East Coast, much earlier elsewhere. So, most of Americans. The very first Americans to see Disclosure Day right now, those who didn't see like the private previews that were shown to journalists and critics, they are now currently in the cinema watching it, because it'll launch in the morning. Probably they'll do some morning showings like they've done here. Then through the course of the day, more people will see it. Within like 8 or 10 hours, millions of people will have seen it. Are we going to find out at some point after that? Are we going to find out sometime after that that's one of those little clips was real? I wonder. I do wonder. And that'll be the disclosure moment. It could be that. Or maybe this is all part of the movie, I don't know. Or, you see, I just wonder this. I mean, even if it's not, this film is going to have an effect on the disclosure movement, a positive effect on the disclosure movement. There's absolutely no doubt about it. This is now, probably for decades to come, this is going to be the film, you could say, well, this is essentially our kind of like, it's our foundation myth. In the post-disclosure world, people will say, this is the film that kind of like, it was like kind of our 1984 or Brave New World. And it's interesting because those novels by George Orwell and Aldous Huxley, they communicated information far more effectively and far deeper and far wider and with more comprehension than any factual document ever could. George Orwell could easily have written a textbook. He could easily have written a textbook about all the things he had. Indeed, he did write political textbooks. Road to Wigan Pier, Homage to Catalonia, which I've read, Burmese Days. He did write those things. Is that me? He did write those things, and indeed, this is why I'm so keen on this sort of thing, because of course my books are also allegorical fiction. The Roswell trilogy is allegorical fiction. My new serial, The Obscurati Chronicles, which you can read for free on Better Books, allegorical fiction. I don't know. One thing. I've been thinking about why there was no postscript scene, because of course there wasn't in Close Encounters either. If you were watching Close Encounters, so if you were in the Close Encounters universe and you were not one of the central characters, or indeed even if you were Ronnie, and the kids, you never know anything had happened, except, well, Roy seems to have gone somewhere, we don't know where he is. He's gone off to planet Serpo. He might come back in a few hundred years, something like that. You wouldn't know that anything had happened. All you would know is that there was a gas spill in Wyoming, and they've cleaned it up, and now you can all go back to your farms. So that is that's kind of what I'm talking about here. And there's no postscript on. It just ends with the disclosure day, the catastrophic disclosure moment. And there's a little hint early at the beginning because we find out that we find out the meaning behind those clicking noises that Margaret makes. They mean, don't be afraid of what you don't understand, because Daniel translates it. He says, I understand it. It means don't be afraid of what you don't understand. Maybe that's the tagline of the entire movie. And it ends with, again, the alien whispers something to Margaret. She whispers it to Daniel, and then she goes and she sits in front of the camera and she just says, listen, and that's the end of the movie. Maybe it's better there is no postscript scene. Maybe that's kind of Spielberg saying, all right, I've done my bit, people, you take it from here. Maybe that's what it's about. You see, it's basically, They Live is exactly the same. It ends with a big revelation, and that's the end of the movie. But apart from the woman shagging this alien, and she looks down and he turns into an alien and says, what's the matter, baby? And then presumably, then it cuts to credits. Presumably she screams her head off at that point. As I said in my little watch party, for They Live, it could be that it's actually not possible to describe this sort of thing. I mean, I made an effort with Roswell Redeemed to describe the post-Illuminati world. And some of the good side of it, the bad side is the problems we might have, that kind of thing. But it's very windy. I hope you can hear me. So let me know if you can't hear me. But, of course you can't let me know. What am I talking about? I'm not on the phone to people. I kind of think, I mean, what I do is, like, if you go to Ben's bookcase, like I said, panel-bb.blogspot.co.uk, I've actually got an article called PIW in Fiction, and in that I analyse a speech given by the author China Miéville, where he actually says, and he's talking in a different context, a very different context to me, has very different ideas, but he essentially says it's actually not possible to do an accurate depiction of a world after such enormous change, after such massive transformation on a paradigmatic level. It's not possible to actually imagine that world correctly, and he believes in a respectful and indeed, I suppose, intellectually honest way from the world before that happens. As he says, we will be different people dreaming different dreams, things like that. So maybe that's why Spielberg didn't put a postscript on there. Maybe that's why. Who knows? Just a thought. But you know, this is going to affect the disclosure movement, absolutely no doubt about it. It's come at just a perfect time. And as I said earlier, it's a film that was made backwards. I mean, it was announced several years ago. Spielberg announced he was going to make a movie about UFOs, and he did. This announcement came under huge publicity. There was an enormous amount of, a lot of journalists were following the story, and unlike most filmmakers in that situation, he was quite happy to allow this publicity. Normally, when a film is being made, there's very little attention paid to it until literally the last few months, when the marketing process begins. See? That's kind of like one. So this film was started. The publicity began on day one. I remember there was all that when they were doing all the filming in Pennsylvania. This is like the scene where the fire engines and things like that, when the cars get smashed about. They invited crowds to come and watch. They invited reporters. Several thousand people turned up to be spectators at this film shoot. Some of them just wanted autographs from the stars, but some of them really wanted to see it. Some of them were genuinely curious about the subject matter, And then the countdown began. 12th of December, we got the poster in Times Square. We got the first trailer dropped, and it was like, wow, mate, you remember what I was like at that? You remember what I was like back then? I wasn't serious, but I did say, oh my God, I'm tempted to go to Universal Studios, break in there and nick one of the reels, so I can watch it now. I was literally saying that in Minecraft, just joking. And now we've had all these hearings, we've had these whistleblowers, we've had hearing after hearing, we've had interviews, we have, even, it's just been announced literally today. Jesse Michaels has done an interview with the Minister of Defence for Brazil, And he's got a bloody Wikipedia page. He's running for Brazilian president. And he says Varginha was real. I mean, and then on Tuesday we had that big press conference on Capitol. It's all happening. It's all, this momentum is keeping going. It's like it's going on and on and on. It's like theatric. It's like stage left, stage right. I was doing this panel discussion. I'll put a link to it on Panel Voice on this with these Canadians, and one lady was saying, oh, it could sort of stagnate and go away. I thought that for a while, but it's not. There seems to be something controlled about it. Like, this is a script, this is a production design, and of course we have a movie with a real production design, a real script, fictional, that's been dropped right in, and it's happened. I reckon it's happened at just the right time. I mean, he couldn't have chosen a better time. I mean, the release date was decided like way long ago. He decided December. In fact, I think he mentioned this January 2026 long ago, maybe way back in a couple of years ago. He said January 26 would be a good time to do it, mid-2026 or something. How did he know? Maybe Spielberg isn't inside. If so, then I'd have to disagree with my friend. I don't think he's a mind controller. I think he's something positive. He's a positive force. He's a good guy. He's a white hat. So, yes. So this, what impact it will have, I don't know. Maybe we can come back to it, do a live stream about this or something. Because right now, it is literally just dropped. Very few people had the good fortune that I did to watch it early. Most people, only a few thousand people got to see it yesterday and Wednesday. And now millions of people across the world are seeing it. People are in there right now, probably in New York, Philadelphia, Boston, where there's early morning showings, and that'll fill up all through the afternoon as there's more showings. By this evening, British summertime, millions of people will have seen it. And I don't know what that effect is going to be, because I don't know, because we don't know. It hasn't happened yet, so I can't really include that in this video. So yeah. Oh, what an amazing time to do this. I just want to talk to people about it. I want to go back and watch it again. I've got to go and watch it again. I've got to. I want to live in it. I want to live in that world. The characters, I really do. You know, if Jackson doesn't want Margaret, I'll have her. She's lovely. Like I said, she's this beautiful character. Absolutely adorable. Or even as BFF, you know, doesn't have to be a girlfriend. BFF will do. She's wonderful. She's a wonderful character. Yeah. And I want to meet up with Hugo and shake his hand, and Daniel, for what they've done. It's going in my head now. I'm getting ungrounded. I'm getting windy again. I'm starting to wax lyrical again. Well, that's it. That is my roving review of the film. I've wanted to do a roving review more than any other, for longer than any other, and I've done it, and I'm glad. As I said, go and see it, but see it more than once, because if you watch it the first time and think, oh, it's a bit of a letdown, try watching it a second time. I didn't think it was a letdown the first time I saw it. When I saw the preview back in High Wycombe, I didn't think it was a letdown. I thought it was good, but watching it a second time, I got even more out of it. And I thought, this is better. It's actually better the second time. And also I recommend all people I know who've seen it to go and watch it a second time. Well, anyway, however many times you have chosen to watch this Panwo TV video, once, twice, 3 times more, however many times it is, thank you for doing so. I appreciate it. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.